It's our pleasure to have with us again today Len Campanaro, who is a neighbor of ours just down the road, actually, and so it's not a long journey for Len to come here, but he's been here several. This is your third or fourth time today. I forgot. I looked and I forgot.
I think this might be number 8.
No. Oh my goodness, wonderful. We are so lucky. Oh, okay, good. We're set. At any rate, Len does a wonderful job, and today I'm going to let you just go ahead and talk, and then there will be the Q&A time afterwards. And again, thanks for being with us. And Beth says, okay, thanks.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all again. Okay, so where are we? Any guesses? We're looking at the Amazon rainforest. I was once lucky enough to fly over the Amazon in a small plane. And as far as the eye could see out any window, it was nothing but a green carpet. And you know how if you've ever done an international flight, they had the little screen that shows the progress of the airplane going across the Atlantic? Well, this plane had a similar screen. And the screen was nothing but green. There were no towns or cities marked on it, anything. And I looked down and I thought, boy, if this plane ever went down, they would never find us. You know, it is just so lush and thick and dense. But anyhow, that's what it looks like. And you get the shadows of the clouds as they move across, but it's a really, really beautiful thing to see. So this screen doesn't do it justice. If you turn around and look at the screen in the back, you'll see much, much more vivid. It's just unbelievable, the colors. Okay, so we're going to start off in the Amazon. And today we're going to get intimate with a number of big animals. We're going to get intimate with another big cat, Jaguars, some big birds, California Condors, and the third biggest land mammal, River Hippopotamus. But before I start talking about these animals, I have follow-up work to do. When I was last with you, which was back in January, and one of the animals I talked about were Maine mountain vipers. And after the session, I was asked a couple of questions by the residents here, and I don't know a lot about reptiles. My thing is mainly mammals and now birds, so I couldn't answer all the questions in much detail. But someone asked me what the benefits were of snakes, so I wanted to give a better answer than the little answer that I did give, and tell you that ecologically, snakes are both prey and predators. They are a food source towards many animals, towards birds, like kookaburras like to eat them, mammals, jaguars like to eat them, and we're going to learn about jaguars, and even other reptiles. And they, in turn, then also as predators feed on birds, small mammals, amphibians, fish, and insects. And basically they help, and this is what I talked about a little bit, they help keep our pest species from overpopulating. Otherwise it would cause considerable damage to our homes and gardens and farms, and help keep the spread of diseases under control, consuming things like rodents, ticks, and spiders. And then I mentioned that they also provide medicinal values, and I was asked, well, can I give some examples of the things that they help cure? And depending on the venom type, the different proteins are used to treat many types of brain injury, strokes and blood clots, high blood pressure, various pain disorders, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, certain cancer therapies, and skin problems. And then finally, I was asked about snow snakes, and I've never heard of a snow snake. And I was told that they only come out when it snows. We had the January snow, so they only come out when it snows, and they're hard to see. You can only see them by their blue eyes. And also part of the myth was that when they bite you, your blood freezes. Well, what I learned was, this is an old woodsman's practical joke. But what I also learned when I researched snow snakes was snow snake is real. It was a winter game played by tribes of indigenous people who lived around the Great Lakes. And what they would do was take a hard stick with a bulbous end, and they would paint the face of a snake on it. And what you would do is you would take a short run and throw the stick underhand it, getting it to slide along the surface of the snow. And whoever stick went the furthest, they were the winner. So there really is such a thing as a snow snake. It's not just a practical joke by old woodsmen. Okay, let's get into today's topic. We're going to talk about the largest cat of the Americas, Jaguars. And they come in two colors, okay? People typically, when they see a black cat, they say panther. And there is no real animal that is actually a panther. There's no such thing. What it is the name that we've given to black cats. 25% of Jaguars are black. And if you've ever seen one for real, and if you get the chance to see it, because it's actually two shades of black, you will see black spots on black fur. Okay? And they come from the darkest, dense sections of the Amazon. And you want to be black because you're in a dark forest. If you were bright, like the one here on the left, it would be easier for prey to see you coming. So it gives you better camouflage to be black. Now, when you get away from the rainforest, either south or north, then you get what we traditionally see as a jaguar. Okay? And to remind you, because I told you this once before, cheetahs have solid black spots. Leopards have a broken rosette, looks like the letter C, forward, backwards, upside down. And jaguars have a broken rosette with spots inside of it. So that's how you tell them apart. So if you buy an animal print shirt, you'll know what you're wearing. So their habitat, historically, if you remember this, I told you once when I gave you the introduction to big cats, all cats originate from Asia. And these cats originated from Asia and also historically lived in Africa and Europe. But about 1 million years or so ago, they crossed the Bering Land Bridge. It was 1,000 miles wide and dry, and they moved into North America. And so they've been here for quite a long time. Their modern, what I'm going to call modern former range, is everything you see in the pink and red there on the map, which included the southwestern part of the U.S., from Texas over to California, Mexico, Central and South America. Their current range is just what you see in red there, okay? And while there is no red up in Arizona, they snuck over the fence. There's 4 of them back in Arizona. We thought that the last of the jaguars was killed about a decade ago. El Jefe, the boss, and that's his picture. He was killed by a trophy hunter in Arizona. So for a number of years, we used to say there are no more in the United States. But in 2023, and they were also spotted again in 2024, there's 4 of them in southern Arizona that snuck under the fence. Okay, as a habitat, they do prefer dense cover and they want to be near water. They're very good swimmers, but you'll find them up mountains as high as 6,500 feet. Physically, they are the 3rd largest cat in the world behind lions and tigers. Really robust size, ranging from about 125 pounds, small female, up to about 350 pounds for a large male. At 350 pounds, you probably don't remember this when I talked about large cats. At 350 pounds, they are bigger than the 2 smallest subspecies of tigers. Malayan tigers only get to about 310 pounds, and that's Sumatran get to 310, and Malayan get to about 3 1/4. So this would be bigger than 2 subspecies out of the 6 subspecies of tigers. So it's a big cat. The ones that are smaller tend to be in the Amazon region, the equatorial region. And the reason is you live in a dense rainforest. So you want a small body so you can squeeze through all that dense vegetation. When you get south or north of that, you find the animals are bigger. Also, you start getting into some cooler temperatures the further you get away, so you want more fat on your body for warmth, particularly at night. They have a massive head, and they have the most powerful bite of any cat. It's more powerful than a lion or the biggest tiger that you're going to find. Lions are like 650 to 1,000. Tigers are about 1,000. These guys are 1,500 psi. Okay, so really, really strong bite. And, they will take on crocodile. They're not afraid to do that. Very large canines and you'll see that how sometimes they're faked for other animals. I'm not going to go to that slide yet. Very large canines. And their tail is relatively short to their body length compared to other cats, but characteristically, when you look at their tails, you'll notice they always have 2 or 3, black rings, and they end in a black tip. So a rather unique characteristic for them. They are mostly nocturnal, okay, except the ones that are melanistic, the black ones. They are active in the day. Melanistic are active in the day looking for prey in that dark, dense forest. Generally, they're going to be solitary, except for when it comes to breeding time and the female taking care of her young. Territory is going to vary, not just on prey density in the area that they have, but also in the season of the year, because in the wet season, it's tougher to get around. So and also whether you're male or female. Females doing a smaller territory. So their territories will range from about 2 square miles to 150 square miles. And they patrol that regularly, okay? So if you go to the St. Louis Zoo and you go to the big cats and you see Jared the Jaguar, people ask, why is he pacing so much? He's not pacing. He's doing what comes naturally. Patrol my territory, make sure no other males come in that, might try to steal my girlfriend. So male, he's tolerant of females in his territory, but not other males. Females are tolerant of males in their territory, but not other females. To claim their territory, they're going to scent mark around it. And the other points I wanted to make here, that a male won't necessarily get into a fight with a young male who's just nomadic passing through his territory, okay, as long as it's not the breeding season for them. As long as he's just going to continue moving on his way, because young males basically are looking for a place that has no occupants that he can establish a territory. Females with cubs are going to avoid males. Okay, that's the way it works with all cats, with the exception of lions who live in prides. And then the male, his job is protecting the kids. But all other cats, the female raises them herself. The male doesn't know whether they're his or not, and he just looks at them either as other competition, or if the adult female doesn't have any cubs, then she'll go back into estrus and breed with me. So the female will do everything she can to avoid males. Play is rough between mom and the cubs amongst themselves. It's a tough life in the jungle for these cats. They are strong climbers. They'll carry something that's 2-3 times their weight up a tree, and they're very strong swimmers. And what they tend to do is avoid people because we are their predator. They do vocalize, low-pitched roar. It was kind of fun Saturday when I was at the zoo. The zebras were acting up. The male zebra was trying to breed with the 3 females, and the females weren't really having it, so there was a lot of commotion going on, and they made quite a noise, and the jaguar could hear them, and he started growling back. He started roaring back a little bit at them. But besides doing a roar, they'll grunt, snort, and a chuff amongst cats is a greeting. It's a hello. So a male meeting a female might do a chuff as a hello greeting. Scent marking comes in a number of ways. Spray urine, as you can see here in this picture. Claw marks on trees, sometimes the ground. And then cheek rubs. All cats do that, rub their cheek. So Hunting, a little, somewhat similar but somewhat different than other big cats. Most big cats are going to go for the neck and crush the windpipe and kill them that way. This cat will do that, but also they will do something that other big cats want. They will crush the skull. With that biting power of theirs, they'll just go crush the skull completely. And as I said to you before, they're not afraid to take on crocodiles or caimans, they're called locally. And they fish. These cats, they will stick their tail in the water as bait, and whether it's fish or crocodile comes up, they get them up there, and they will go in after them. And they are pretty nasty. They do prefer large prey, like lions and tigers. They do stalk and ambush, but they're faster runners than lions and tigers. Lions, tigers, leopards, they're all about 35 miles an hour. They max out about there, give or take. These guys can go to 50 miles an hour for a short distance, so they can really get after the prey. And as indicated in the lower picture there, you can see once they've made a kill, they want privacy, and they'll either drag it up a tree or into dense cover to consume. They do have a competitor in their area, but the competitor tends to stay away from them because they're smaller, and that's pumas and cougars. And usually this happens if they're in a dry climate together. You're not normally going to find that cougar and puma in the dense Amazon with the jaguar. The jaguar is typically going to go after the larger prey and the puma after medium size. So they seem to coexist rather peacefully, keeping distance from each other. Diet-wise, the jaguar has about 85 different items on his menu. Favorite thing to eat, no matter what type of animal he takes, is to first eat the heart and the liver. And different animals go for different things. And this is the only one I've come across. I'm sure there are probably others, but their favorite thing is heart and liver. Their preference is capybara, which is the center top picture. They're the world's largest rodents. Deer, tamandua over there in the top right, and that basically is an anteater. They'll also eat tapir. I've given you a picture in the bottom corner there. The middle picture is a peccary, which basically is a wild pig found in South America. Everybody knows what armadillo and fish look like. They're the only cat that has a taste for reptiles. So not only going after caiman or crocodile, but also anacondas and turtles. And with that strong bite, could either bite through a turtle shell. Now the turtle shell is bone covered in keratin, so it's a composite, so it's really strong. He can bite right through it. Or if he can't bite through it, he can literally rip the bottom and top shells apart with his paws. He's that strong of a cat. Now, when it comes to breeding, the female gets things going. That's when she's going to roar that she's an estrus to attract the male to come to her. And the pair will basically form a temporary association, and for several weeks they'll travel and hunt together. And once they're used to each other and she's fine with him, then they will mate. After mating, they separate. He leaves and goes his own way. Gestation, roughly 100 days. If you remember, for comparison, when I talked about tigers, they're about 105, and lions about 110 days. So these are about 100 days, which is similar to leopards. They're born in the rainy season. Why rainy season? Well, in the rainy season, other predators aren't traveling as much, so it's less danger for her cubs. So they're born in the rainy season. Twins are common. But she can have a litter up to 4 cubs, and they're usually a couple of pounds. The cubs will stay close to mom, but they'll leave mom at about 18 months, which is similar to what leopards do. If you remember when I talked about tigers where they leave mom at a year, and lions were at 2 to 2.5 years. So these are at 18 months. Maturity comes along pretty quickly for a female at age 2 or 3, male age 3 to 4. And maturity is fast because your life expectancy is short. It's only about 13 or 14 years. In managed care, they'll live till about 18 to 25 years. So if you go to the zoo and you see Jared is up in age. He's about 18 years old. Okay, so he's lived past what he would be in the wild. The other unusual thing about life expectancy is most times I'm going to stand up here and tell you that the female outlives the male. This is one species, the male outlives the female by about 3 years, and I don't have a reason why. I'd like to know that, but I don't know. Their status from the International Union of the Conservation of Nature is that they are near threatened. Their population, the last census that was done 2018, 7 years ago, 173,000 across the range and declining. Their main issue is humans, and it's trophy hunting. Hunting them for sell pelts on the black market. Their teeth, rather large, are basically about the size of tiger teeth. So because there's so few tigers left, there's only like 3,000 tigers left in the wild, oftentimes poachers will go after these and they'll sell them as tiger teeth because you don't know. People buying it don't know a tiger tooth from a jaguar tooth. I couldn't tell you either. Without DNA testing, you wouldn't know. They also suffer from deforestation, illegal cutting of the rainforests, and then they get into a problem of competition for food, where hunters hunting other animals means less animals for the jaguar to hunt as prey, so that the jaguar comes closer in contact with local communities, maybe raiding them, raiding the livestock, so that winds up causing conflicts. Their natural way of succumbing was basically infections and illnesses from wounds they would receive when they're going after prey. Because the prey just don't lay down. They are going to fight, and usually the predator gets hurt somewhat in the process. You know, which is a reason sometimes people ask me, why doesn't the zoo give, the big cats live animals to go after? For that very reason. One, it's brutal to see, but the other thing is you've got these cats which are endangered, and there's not a lot left in the world, and you don't want them to be accidentally injured in the process. So for two reasons there. But there is hope, with help from all of us. Sanctuaries have been established in both Central and South America. Hunting restrictions are in place on many of these countries. The AZA zoos, like the St. Louis Zoo, they work with Latin American scientists on different projects to help protect and study and understand these animals better, to preserve them. So I asked you then support our zoo because we are involved with these types of projects for these animals in Central and South America. Don't buy illegal trade items, okay? If you go on some trip someplace to South America and somebody offers, don't buy it. You don't want to encourage them. And locally, know where your purchases come from. Remember I said where they're losing trees? When you buy paper products, whether it's napkins, tissue paper, copier paper for your printer, look for this Forest Stewardship Council symbol, a little tree with the sign, with the initials FSC. That tells you that the manufacturer is certified that they don't take the trees where the animals are endangered, and they harvest trees in a sustainable fashion. So if they cut trees, they replant trees and they recycle. Half the paper comes that way, half the paper doesn't. And the ones that don't, they're the ones that are buying these illegally harvested trees. So if you want to make an impact, do it with your dollar. It works a lot better than letter writing. So buy from the good guys and not the bad guys. Okay. Should look familiar. Grand Canyon. If you went to the Grand Canyon probably 35 years or so ago, you would not see the next animal I'm going to show you. But if you go there today, you will see. And I'll tell you why. As we learn about this animal, I'll tell you why you see them now. The largest bird of North America is the California condor. It is a vulture. Most people are surprised to learn that. It is a vulture. It's the largest of the vultures. As a vulture, it's a scavenger, and they're very important to environmental health and in limiting diseases. And we'll talk about that as we go, because they're going to eat many things that would make other animals who ate the remains of a dead animal, or humans, it would make us sick and spread diseases rather easily. But they have an ability to do that and not suffer from it. So if you go to the zoo right now, the birdhouse is closed. Okay, birdhouse is closed because of the avian flu that's going around. Okay, the condors are outside. It doesn't bother them. Okay, so they got the right stomach contents. A couple common things about vultures and condors. 23 species remain around the world. What you're going to find is that their heads and neck are featherless. Reason being, okay, a lot of people look at an ugly bird. No, reason being is they're very clean birds. When you stick your head into a carcass and pull it out, okay, if you have feathers, there's no way you're going to get blood and all that other messy stuff out of your feathers. No way to clean it. But if it's bald, then he can then take and rub his head easily, say like in the grass or bush or something, and clean himself up that way. They have very long and broad wings. Okay, there's a big body bird, so they need those long, broad wings for flying and a stiff tail for soaring. They have claws, and people get scared of them because they have claws, but they have weak feet. They cannot kill anything with their claws. They all have a similar skull, and this is a model of a vulture skull with a slightly hooked beak. They're all the same, looking at the skull. And they lack a voice box. Okay. So you're not going to hear them singing songs like you do, from the Cardinals or any other birds locally that we have. Some notable characteristics for the condor. Their wingspan is almost 10 feet across, the California condor. The Andean condor was slightly more than 10 feet. So they're slightly bigger than the California condor. Unique to the California condor is, notice this white patch underneath the wing. That is unique to a California condor. So if you're out west and you see this large black bird flying overhead, okay, and you think you've seen a condor, if it doesn't have that white diamond pattern in it, you're looking at a turkey vulture. Okay, so turkey vulture is going to be all black, and the turkey vulture is only 6 feet across. But when he's up a couple of thousand feet, you can't tell. But you look for that white diamond pattern, and you'll know if you're really seeing a condor or not. Weight-wise, they average about 22 pounds, pretty big bird. The Mother Nature tends to give baby animals extra camouflage. Doesn't matter what kind of baby animal you are, although I'll give you at another time an example of one that doesn't for special circumstances. But normally they have extra camouflage. So the young ones, until they're about 4 years old, have a black head, so they don't, dark gray, blackish head, so that they don't stand out. Now, as they become adolescents, they get this yellowish orange head. They can take care of themselves at this age, okay? And by the time they're adult, they're going to have the classic red head that you see right there. And that red will actually intensify during courtship. They have excellent eyesight, but they can't smell anything. And that's not true for all vultures, okay? Turkey vultures, they rely on the sense of smell. In their environment, a lot of times dead animals die and hide under things. They're not going to see them. They can pick up the scent, even though they're flying hundreds of feet up in the air. Condors, on the other hand, very excellent eyesight, can't smell anything. I think they got it the right way, because if I was sticking my head in a rotting carcass, I wouldn't want to smell what I was eating, okay? So I think a condor really has the better scenario. Their feet are rather large. I said claws, okay? Their feet, 6 inches across. That's the size of my hand. That's their foot, okay? And They can't grab anything with it, let alone kill anything. They simply put their foot down on the carcass to hold it steady and then pick the carcass apart with that hooked beak of theirs. They can't even carry food back to their nest to feed their young. They have a crop, okay? And so when they eat food, it goes into the crop, and then when they go back to their nest, they regurgitate the food for their young because they can't otherwise carry it back to their young. And because of the nasty, tough stuff it does, it actually works out well for the young because it gets a chance to marinate in there, so it's easier for the young to eat it. For them, if they were going to eat it, what they have to do is eat stones for their gizzard, so that when the food goes into the gizzard, the muscles of the gizzard grind up the food against the stones. And that's how then they're able to completely digest it. And they have a natural resistance to bacterial toxins. So even though the carcass is rotting in the heat, they can eat it without ill effects. California condors are national birds. People don't realize that. They used to be right here in Missouri, okay? Until, okay, the advent of Europeans coming to North America. They flew from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific, from Florida to New York State, and from Baja, Mexico to British Columbia, Canada, okay? But basically, humans started persecuting them, shooting them, poisoning them. Ugly bird, let's just kill them, without realizing this ugly bird is actually helping you to survive. So by 1937, they were only living on the coast of California, eating the remains of dead whales. Hence, that's when they got their name, the California condor. But it was really a national bird that you would have seen flying here. Today's range has expanded through conservation work. They now are found all through Baja, Mexico. The map is a little bit out of date, but it's the best one I could find to talk about these things. All through Baja, Mexico, up into southern San Diego County. You'll find them all in the areas of the national parks that are in California, that purple area there. There are different release sites for reintroduction to the wild. Up Northern California, there's a release site on an Indian reservation, so they've begun populating Northern California and expanding. They're not completely up into Oregon, but they are in part of Oregon. And then there's a release site at the Vermilion Cliffs in northern Arizona, so that's what would cause you to now be able to see them at the Grand Canyon when you go there, or if you go into southern Utah, you'll find them there. Habitat-wise, they have a really broad tolerance for the type of habitat and climate that they live in. They do prefer open, semi-open grasslands, relying on sight, okay, and maybe open woodlands for foraging. But you'll find them anywhere from the seashores to rocky scrublands and nesting high up on cliffs, up as high as about 6,500 feet. They prefer, if they can't find that, then they want to be near the top of a tall tree, a large tall tree. And I wanted to give you some idea of what the different environments, habitat environments would look like where you're going to find them. In the morning, you'll typically find them preening their feathers, so putting all their feathers back in place and warming themselves. Typically, they're going to face the sun, and that does two things. One, it helps warm them, but if they've collected any parasites in their feathers from the prior day, the heat will actually drive the parasites out of their feathers. If it's a hot day and they're trying to cool themselves off, they cool by panting or urinating on their legs. They've got blood flowing through those spindly legs of theirs, and by urinating on the leg, when the condensation occurs, the effect of the condensation is then evaporation. The effect of the evaporation then is a cooling effect on their legs, which in turn cools the blood that flows through their body. They typically are going to forage from mid-morning to mid-afternoon. okay? They have to wait for the thermals to come up. It's a big bird. They need to rely on thermals to fly great distances. So the distance of their home range will vary based on the season. In the summertime, they can fly out further than they can in the wintertime. Getting up and flying out mid-morning to mid-afternoon is 7 to 8 hours of flight time. Where in the winter, you don't have as much heating, so it's 5 to 6 hours, so then they're going to have a smaller range. Typically, they're going to fly out 2+ hours to find their forward sight. They might go out as much as 150 miles and then come back 150 miles the same day. They're usually going to find them flying in a circle flight like this. A lot of times they'll be by themselves. The circle flight that you're seeing, I want to mention this, keep this in mind, because when I talk about breeding later on, male and female will often do flights together as part of their courtship. They would do this that you're seeing in this picture. But what they're doing with their great eyesight and at the height that they are is they're looking for a gathering of other scavengers. In this case, a gathering of ravens in the lower picture, because ravens likewise are scavengers. And once they see that, then they'll descend into the area. They will not kill the ravens, but the ravens are just afraid of their size. So the ravens disperse until the condor is finished, and he will then move on. They have a home range. They don't do long migration. So when I said they flew from the Atlantic to the Pacific, no, they didn't fly back and forth. They would simply have a home range that extended out about 150 miles, give or take. Soaring, they usually are soaring at about 30 miles an hour, but they can get up to 45 and 50 miles an hour. You don't see them doing a lot of flapping of their wings. They do that to take off, but it's a big body, and they would tire if they were constantly flapping their wings like you see maybe a crow or a raven doing. They are aggressive towards ravens, turkey vultures, and golden eagles, and the reason is that they go after either their eggs or their young. So when they see one of those, they tend to be aggressive toward them. Remember I said no voice box, so the only thing they can do is make hissing and snorting sounds, and they typically do that to protect their nest if they're concerned about some other animal coming close. They're typically going to go after a medium to large carcass. And I already mentioned about their environmental importance. They prefer a freshly dead animal to an old dead animal. They can tell by eyesight. Not that the fact that it smells worse doesn't mean anything to them, just by eyesight. They will eat the soft tissue first, and if they come across a small carcass, maybe like a rabbit or squirrel, something like that, they're likely to consume some of the small bones, and they're doing that for extra calcium. I mentioned before, they'll also go after small stones, but because of humans and our bad habits of dropping trash all over the place, they sometimes eat micro trash, which is not good. It doesn't work like the stone in the gizzard. It's typically going to hurt them. So they'll eat anything like bottle caps, pop tabs, broken shards of glass, nuts, bolts, and so forth. And vets have removed all those kinds of things out of their bodies to save them when they consume that. They will drink water, but only after they're eating, and they don't eat every day. They eat 3 to 5 times a week, 1 to 2 pounds per meal. They're generally monogamous for life. You get courtship, pair flights, they'll do together, they'll preen each other, as we're seeing here. Then the male will droop his head, and I've seen these behaviors, kind of droop his head down, and then prance and strut around the female, okay, until she decides, yeah, I like you, and they're going to breed together. And even though they're together year after year, he's going to do it again the next time they're going to breed, which is actually every other year. Breeding is typically happening late fall into the early spring. Their nest is minimal. They typically don't go around collecting twigs and branches and leaves like you think of most birds' nests. Typically on the cliff, which is where they tend to do it most of the time, is it'll just be a few loose stones and bones and other debris that they find on the cliff. And it's simply because they are going to simply have their egg sitting on their feet. I'm going to show you a picture of that. Okay, and the egg has a heavy side, so if it rolls some, it'll roll a little bit, but it's not necessarily going to roll off the cliff. So they only need a couple of small stones there to make sure it stays in place. They only lay one egg every 2 years. Okay, so reproduction is really, really slow for these animals. And however, if they lose their egg, the female will lay another egg without breeding again. She'll lay another egg in 30 days. Okay, and she could do that twice in a season. Eggs are fairly a good size. They weigh 6 to 11 ounces. Both parents are going to incubate and take care of feeding and care of the youngster. Incubation is about 57 days. So remember I said blood flowing through the legs? So they're not necessarily like a lot of birds. They develop what is called a brood, a patch, where after they've bred, hormones kick in and you lose some feathers down on your stomach so that you have the warm skin of your body against the egg to incubate the egg. Not so with condors. They, like some like emperor penguins, they simply keep the egg on their feet, and the heat from the blood that's flowing through the feet is what provides the heat for incubating the egg. By the time they're 5 or 6 months of age, they have fledged, they have flight feathers, and they're starting to fly a little bit in close proximity, but they won't really start foraging out following their parents for short distances till they're about 10 or 12 months. They rely on their parents for 2 years to survive, and that's why they only lay an egg once every 2 years. Sexually mature bird will start breeding between the ages of 6 and 8. And this is a long-lived bird. They'll live well into their 60s in the wild. But their mortality is primarily because of humans. Hunting them, as I mentioned before, lead poisoning. When hunters hunt, many times they use lead ammunition. And if they field dress an animal in the wild and they leave the remains, oftentimes the lead is still there. The lead bullets tend to splinter. And when the bird eats the remains that the hunter left behind, they ingest the lead poisoning and then eventually die of lead poisoning. They've had problems with DDT, the thinning of the eggs. We remember that with bald eagles, PCBs, mercury. Running into power lines, okay? Their other problem, not just running into them, is standing on a power line. We see birds standing on power lines all the time, right? Condors are so big, they often touch 2 power lines, so it completes a circuit and they electrocute themselves. Where small birds are only touching 1 line, so they're fine, okay? Diminished food. You know, people, when they see a dead animal, they tend to clean it up. So there's less food lying around to eat. I already mentioned microtrash to you, tearing up their insides. They do have some natural predators. Adults don't have any, but the young golden eagles, bobcats, and puma and ravens go after their eggs. So to the birds on that list, they tend to be hostile and attack them to drive them away. So, by 1982, there were only 22 birds left in the whole world, and they were living on the California coast. They were critically endangered. Their numbers were dropping year after year, and for quite a few years, the San Diego Zoo and the LA Zoo kept petitioning Congress to authorize them to go out and capture the remaining birds and bring them into a captive breeding program to keep them from going completely extinct. Finally, in '82, Congress authorizes it, and 22 birds are left at that point in time. So the San Diego Zoo developed a breeding facility, which is out at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park, way out in the boondocks. And there's a picture of what it looks like. And in 1983, the first chick was born there. Now, when you're raising condors in managed care, you're going to do a number of different things because you want them to succeed when you put them back into the wild. First of all, scientists understanding that when mama loses her egg after 30 days, she learns another one, scientists decide to take advantage of that. Mom lays an egg, you steal it. She lays a second egg, you steal it, okay? You let mom keep the third egg, and she's going to hatch it. Now, Mother Nature tells her, you only get one chick at a time. So she's not interested in the first two. So it's up to the scientists to sit on them and hatch those. Okay. So they hatch them, okay, but now you have to feed them and raise them. Well, you don't, if you hand feed as a human being, a baby bird food, you are going to imprint on them and they're going to think you're their mother. You can't release them if they think a human is their mother, okay? So what they did was they created condor puppets. And they would bring a puppet from out behind the screen and it would feed the baby chick just like mama would. And that's how they would raise them, okay? Never seeing human beings. Now, whether it's a baby chick or even an adult condor, humans looking at them cannot tell a male from a female. You have to do DNA tests, okay? They look identical, their size is identical, okay? Not like some birds where it's really easy to tell a male from a female. After they fledge, get their flight wings at about 6 months or so, then they're transferred to those open pens we saw in this last picture, okay? And they're transferred there when they're about a year old, but it's after they've fledged. They're put out there with adult condors so they can learn, as an adult condor, how do you go find food? You know, how do you do all this in the wild when you're going to be released? So they go through a training period. So, 1992, the first release into the wild, okay? So at that point in time, this is the first time you're really seeing people is when they're getting ready to be released. You know, they've captured them, they've hauled them out into the boondocks, and now they've got a half dozen release points in different places, and that's when they're going to set them up for release. Before they've gone through release, they went through power pole training. At the grazing site, they set up mock power lines with a low voltage. When the bird lands on there, he gets a mild zap, okay? He learns, don't do that. He learns it pretty fast. Most birds, it's just one time. Get zapped, leave it alone, okay? They get GPS tagged, okay, so that they can be tracked via satellite wherever they go, so they know where they are. With this then, when they go out into the wild, every year, scientists from the zoo go out and recapture every single bird. They recapture every single bird. They're going to give them blood tests, make sure they're staying healthy. They are also going to look to see if they have young. The young stay with the parents for 2 years. So you give blood tests to the young, you tag them, and you give them inoculations from modern diseases that historically they never had to deal with. So they're going to be better off surviving. And remember I said they go find microtrash and they get themselves in trouble? Tyson's, the chicken people, gives the zoo chicken bones. So then the zoo brings the chicken bones and sprinkles them around their nesting sites. So when they want bones for calcium, they can find them there. They don't have to go foraging, and they'll also make sure that there's some stones there as well. In California, lead ammo was banned. You can hunt in California, you just can't use lead ammo, okay, to help protect them. A lot of awareness programs are done. From 22 birds, now there's over 550, and most of them fly free in the places that I pointed out to you. There are other zoos are now helping in the breeding program. Portland, Oregon, Chapultepec Zoo in Mexico City. There's a wild bird sanctuary in Idaho that does. So, best thing you can do, don't litter when you go hiking or camping. Take it with you, okay? Because it not only affects them, it affects other animals. You know, and particularly a lot of affects tortoises, and support our zoo. While the St. Louis Zoo doesn't do anything with condors, the St. Louis Zoo has some programs for other birds. I'm going to be talking to you about Guam kingfishers at a future time. Those have actually gone extinct in the wild, and things are being done to reintroduce them. So I'll be telling you about that on another day. So definitely support our zoo. A couple of fun facts. Where does the word condor come from? Well, that's what the Incans called them, kuntur. Okay, so we've anglicized it into condor, kuntur. The Native Americans called them the Thunderbirds. Probably you've heard Thunderbirds, you think about the Air Force flying team. But Thunderbirds, the Native Indians knew that these birds didn't flap their wings, and they were big birds, and they thought when they heard thunder in the sky, it must be these birds flapping their wings. So they called this the Thunderbird. A group of condors is called a party, and a condor breeding facility is called a condominium. And not many animals can do this, but there are 2 documented cases of females reproducing asexually without the involvement of a male. And the only thing they have found with that is life expectancy isn't as long. It's only maybe about 10 years, early teens. They don't make it into their 60s, but they can reproduce without a male. Okay, to the third animal, and I'm going to take a quick water break, just a second. Pick up the pace. Okay, so we are now in Africa, and we're going to be looking at different lakes and rivers and so forth to find hippopotamus. It's a Greek word meaning horse of the river. Now there's 2 types of hippopotamus. There is the river hippo, also known as the common hippo, which is what we have at the St. Louis Zoo. And there's pygmy hippos. The river hippo, about 125,000 of them. Their IUCN classification is vulnerable. These guys primarily live in water. Males can get up as much as 6,000 pounds. Pygmy hippos are classified as endangered. Only about 2,500 left. They primarily live on land, only found in Liberia. And they're about 1/6 of the size of a river hippo. We don't have pygmy hippos here. If you go to the San Diego Zoo, you'll find both there. But here we have river hippos. Their origins trace back to Africa about almost 2 million years ago. Historically, they were found not just in Africa, but from England all the way across Europe into Asia. Their modern range is just sub-Saharan Africa, the orange areas you see on the map, basically around estuaries, rivers, and lakes. They have to be deep enough that they can completely submerge their body, and they can't be fast-running bodies of water either. And they need to be near grasslands. Closest living relatives, believe it or not, are whales and dolphins. People often think pigs or, maybe a rhinoceros or something like that, but it's whales and dolphins. Males typically 3,500 to 6,000 pounds, and they actually grow all their lives. Females, about half that size or so, maybe a little bit better, 2,000 to 3,500 pounds. We're looking at a picture of a male there. This is from the San Diego Zoo. We don't have males here in St. Louis. We have 3 females. Their face is literally on the top of their head, and that's so that they can keep their body submerged. And you can see that here. He wants to keep his body submerged in the water. He's going to come up for a breath of fresh air. His eyes will be above the surface, and then his nostrils. And he'll open up his nostrils to grab a breath of fresh air, close them, and then go back down. Likewise, he'll do the same thing with his ears. We have sweat glands. They have mucus glands. Okay, they emit a thick, oily, reddish fluid when they're ashore, and that's to protect their body from losing water, because they have very sensitive skin, protect it from sunburn, and if they get an abrasion on their skin, it basically works as an antibiotic against infections. They can open their jaws over 150 degrees, almost 180 degrees. As humans, we can only do 45. Their bite is stronger than a lion or a tiger. It's even stronger than the jaguar we just talked about. Their bite is 1,800 pounds. They've been known to literally chop a man in half. Okay? They can hear both above and below the water simultaneously. So if their head comes up for a bit, their ears are getting the sounds above the waterline, and below the waterline, their lower jaw will pick up sound waves and transmit that to their ear. So they're not defenseless that something is going to sneak up on them down below. Their tusks, the male's tusks, are 20 inches. I brought a tape measure just to simply give you an idea. 20 inches. That's their tusk for a male. Female's going to be half that. Female's going to be 10. But I wanted you to see that, because if I did it this way, you probably wouldn't believe me. So I brought that with me. Toes are partially webbed for extra mobility in water. They do have a dense layer of blubber under their skin to give them warmth in the cooler water, buoyancy, and protect them from predators. So the predators attack, they're not getting to vital organs easily. They do live in small herds. A herd of hippo are known as a school or a bloat. No permanent bonds in the herd other than mother with up to 4 offspring from 4 successive breeding seasons. And you can see that in this picture. Okay, so there's mom all the way in the right. We got 1, 2, 3, and these little tiny legs underneath mom. That's number 4. That's her most recent calf. So, bulls could be territorial. They're going to stake out about 100 yards of shoreline. And they're staking that out. They don't want other males in that area, okay? Because if they've got a good territory, they're the one that's going to be able to do all the breeding and pass his genes along. So bulls during breeding season, which is the dry season, when the lakes are down and the rivers are narrower, it's easier to meet up with the females. The males are going to get into these jaw matches, and that's how they're going to be fighting against each other. Males are known to go after offspring. Once they get the female, they go into estrus again, so she'll breed with him. But even though the female is about half his size, she can defend herself and her young from that. She's not going to open her mouth as big as he is, okay? He's the one with the big mouth. What she does is she comes at him from the side, and her head right into the side of his ribs, knocks the air out of him, all the hot air is out, and he takes off and leaves, her calf alone. So, moms are smart. They're going to spend their day submerged in water because their skin is very sensitive, it easily dries out. Hold their breath typically for about 5 minutes. Usually they only hold it for about 2 minutes. And they'll come to the surface, take a quick breath, and go down. If they're sleeping in the water, their body automatically does that. And it just simply comes up, take a breath, and goes right back down, and they never lost a wink of sleep. They come out of the water in the early evening, and they graze. They're not eating vegetation in the water. They like to eat tender grasses. So they'll come out of the land, out onto the land, roaming 2 to 5 miles, and cutting down the grass. And they'll cut it down to just a couple of inches. And it looks like a neatly mowed lawn. And that's why they call them hippo lawns. And, once they've grazed for about 5 hours, then they're going to take a nap and get themselves back into the water, or go get in the water and take a nap there. They are considered a keystone species because they're very important to the survival of a number of other species, okay? When they're out on the ground, okay, they are defecating out there, so they're planting, they're providing fertilizer for the vegetation. By trimming down the grass, it causes new shoots to grow The new shoots are what gazelle and antelope like to eat. So you've got a healthy gazelle and antelope population. They in turn provide food for the predators like leopards and lions. Okay? When they go back to the water and they defecate there, their tail works like a manure spreader. So it breaks up the dung into real fine small pieces. It's high in nutrition. The fish like to eat that. Okay? And then people, we like to eat the fish. So they're considered a keystone species because they're really helping the whole ecosystem to work and work properly. They cannot swim. They're in water all the time, but they can't swim. They walk on the bottom of the lake or the riverbed. When they come ashore, they trot. They don't walk, they trot. They can charge 20 miles an hour or more. In a drought, when their watering hole or lake dries up, they will go look for other water. And they're known to travel as much as 30 miles to find an appropriate watering hole. They do vocalize, but most of the time that's underwater, and that's going to be bellows and grunts and so forth. Normally they're calm, except when an intruder shows up, then they're going to be aggressive. You are 3 times more likely to die from an encounter with a hippo than you are with a shark. So they really have earned a reputation as the most dangerous animal of Africa, more so than a lion or a leopard. I guess I already talked about this, but as part of their grazing, they're not cutting the grass with their teeth. They don't have any teeth in the not teeth as incisors to cut things like we would with our teeth. They use their lips, and with their lips, they basically, moving their head side to side, break the grasses off. Tough grasses they usually don't eat. It doesn't work that well. Multi-chamber stomach, very slow digestion process, and that's basically to maximize the nutrient intake, but not a lot of nutrient value there in the grasses. They can survive several weeks without food, okay, with their low metabolism. They're going to consume about 1.5% of their body weight every night, 55 to 90 pounds of grass, okay? And in drought years, when grasses aren't growing, they do turn carnivorous. But otherwise they're normally herbivores. Reproduction, bulls control territory are most successful. They breed underwater. It takes about 30 minutes. And during the process, the female is just coming back up, grabbing a breath of air, and the two of them doing it together and going back down. Gestation, even though this is the 3rd largest land mammal, okay? You remember when I talked about elephants, 22 months, and rhinos, I talked about, they were like 16 months. These are only half that. They're about 8 months, okay? When a cow is going to give birth, she's going to leave the area and get off by herself. And basically you look for shallow water or actually do it on land. And they're going to give birth during the wet season, so you don't get as many predators around at that point in time. The calf is born hind legs first. Most of the time, head comes out first. This time, hind legs come out. That's so if they're born in water, they can immediately, automatically push off the bottom and come up to the surface for that first breath of air. Mother Nature's really smart. Weight-wise, 55 to 120 pounds, about half that of, an elephant is about 250 for comparison's sake. And the calf will nurse underwater, only nurse for about 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and they have to break off and come up, get a breath, and go back down to business. Interbirth interval can be 1 or 2 years. The young are vulnerable to crocs in their first year. They typically stay with their mother for about 7 years. Maturity, sexual maturity in the wild varies from 6 to 14 years, usually about 10. Lifespan, you can see 30 to 50, in managed care about 60. The 3 females we have at the St. Louis Zoo are in their mid-20s. Mortality, because of humans, primarily. The young can succumb to crocs, lions, and hyenas. But humans go after them for their tusks, their hide, and their meat. Their tusks are sold as ivory in lieu of ivory from elephants, okay? Because elephants are getting better protected. They need to be protected even better than they are, but these guys aren't getting much in the way of protection. They also get into conflicts with humans because humans are doing more agricultural growth. You're closer to the river and water and so forth. Hippo comes out, can't find enough grass. He's going to come in and eat your crops. So naturally, you're going to shoot at him that way. And then the other problem is climate change and the desertification of Africa, where lakes and rivers are getting smaller. There is help with there is hope with help from all of us. Several countries have started some protected habitats from them, input hunting bans. A lot of education is going on about them as well. There is the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, which about 200 countries have signed off on, not to trade in any type of animal body parts. So again, please support our zoo. In case you didn't see the news, Cully, our longtime polar bear, he was involved in a trade for 2 future draft picks. Actually, he went to the Toledo Zoo. He is in his prime breeding years, and his genes are very valuable to the zoo since he was wild born. And we got their 2 young polar bears in exchange. 2 males, Kalik and Kalu, names mean lightning and thunder. They were born November of 22. At 620 pounds and 740 pounds, they're not cubs, they're juveniles, okay, even though they're only a little over 2 years old. At those weights, they're the size of a full-grown, mature female. But as males, they're going to double their size. They're going to get up to 12 to 1,400 pounds. So they're not on exhibit yet. They're in quarantine. Quarantine usually lasts 30 days, so probably a good 3 weeks yet to go before you see them. But I wanted to share that with you.
Okay, I think it's time, 4 o'clock, for a big round of applause for Len for another wonderful presentation. You're just amazing, and we so appreciate when you come to us.
My pleasure.
We
My pleasure.
look forward to the next time.
Yes, the
All
next
right.
time is on Monday, April 7th. We're going to talk about runners then. We're going to have cheetahs, dire wolves, and pronghorn. So, thank you.